Imagine a patient presents to the emergency room with raging fever, severe muscle aches, and rapid onset hypotension. Your first instinct is to run the standard sepsis protocol, wide open intravenous fluids. But within hours, their lungs drown in fluid, they plunge into cardiogenic shock, and they develop severe bleeding. What went wrong? You just treated hantavirus cardiopulmonary syndrome like a bacterial infection, and aggressive IV fluids are exactly what makes this disease so lethal. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are breaking down everything you need to know about hantaviruses for your board exams, your clinical rotations, and the wards. Plus, we'll unpack the major global health update, the recent May 2026 multi-country cruise ship outbreak that has changed how we view this virus forever. Let's start with the microbiology core. Hantaviruses are enveloped RNA bunyaviruses. The central driver behind this entire disease is not structural damage to the tissues, but capillary leakage secondary to functional changes in the endothelial cells of small vessels. The virus primarily infects endothelial cells, though it can also invade macrophages, lymphocytes, cardiomyocytes, and even astrocytes. But here is the massive board-style geographic split you need to remember. Asian and European hantaviruses mainly target the kidneys, causing hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, or Hfrs. In the US, this is occasionally caused by the sole virus. Hantaviruses in the Americas target the lungs and heart, causing hantavirus cardiopulmonary syndrome, or HCPRS, most famously caused by the sin nombre virus, or SNV. HCPRS is far more severe than HFRS, carrying a staggering mortality rate of roughly 40%. The intense immune response and release of inflammatory mediators cause a massive fluid shift. In the lungs, this leads to severe non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema and pleural effusions. You can easily distinguish this from cardiogenic edema on the boards because HCPRS presents with low pulmonary artery occlusion pressures and an incredibly high protein content in the edema fluid. Traditionally, epidemiologists have classified hantaviruses as zoonotic pathogens requiring direct or indirect rodent contact for human infection. The virus is shed via the urine, feces, or saliva of acutely infected reservoir rodents, such as the deer mouse. Human transmission typically occurs through the inhalation of aerosolized secretions or contaminated dust, a scenario frequently observed during the clearance of confined, long-closed spaces like rural cabins, barns, sheds, or crawl spaces. Consequently, specific occupational groups, including forestry workers, agricultural laborers, military personnel, and animal trappers, exhibit a significantly higher vulnerability to exposure. While standard hantaviruses depend strictly on animal vectors, the Andes virus, endemic to Argentina, represents a critical epidemiological exception. It remains the only documented hantavirus species capable of sustained person-to-person transmission. The operational implications of this capability were heavily underscored in May 2026. The World Health Organization, WHO, actively monitored an evolving multi-country outbreak originating on a modern cruise ship transiting from Argentina across the South Atlantic Ocean. The outbreak resulted in at least 13 confirmed cases and 3 fatalities. Let's highlight specific physiological factors driving person-to-person spread. Peak infectivity. Transmission efficiency is highest during the early febrile prodromal phase, coinciding with peak viral replication. Biological vehicles. The virus demonstrates high shedding rates in oral and respiratory fluids. Viable viral loads have been consistently isolated from saliva, respiratory secretions, blood, and urine. Vertical transmission. Beyond respiratory droplets and close contact, vertical transmission via breastfeeding has also been clinically documented. The incubation period for hantavirus infections spans 1 to 7 weeks, with the clinical median presentation typically occurring within 14 to 17 days. Following this asymptomatic window, the disease manifests through 2 distinct clinical phases. Phase 1, the prodromal febrile phase. Spanning a duration of 2 to 8 days, this initial stage presents with systemic symptoms that closely resemble severe influenza. Systemic symptoms. Patients consistently present with high fever, chills, cephalgia, and profound myalgias. Gastrointestinal manifestations, nausea, emesis, and diarrhea are frequent. The severity of the accompanying abdominal pain can frequently mimic an acute surgical abdomen, complicated by a lack of localized findings. ANDV-specific indicators. In cases involving the Andes virus, clinicians should look for distinctive signs such as conjunctival injection, facial flushing, and a fine petechial rash distributed across the trunk, neck, or palate. Diagnostic imaging. Notably, diagnostic chest radiographs during this initial febrile window typically show no acute pulmonary abnormalities. Phase 2, the cardiopulmonary phase. This stage represents a critical, life-threatening escalation of the disease. It is characterized by the sudden onset of a non-productive cough and rapidly progressive dyspnea, signaling an abrupt transition into acute respiratory failure. Pulmonary impact. Chest imaging at this stage reveals diffuse infiltrates consistent with acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. Cardiovascular collapse. Patients develop severe hypotension, cardiogenic shock, and cardiac arrhythmias driven by profound capillary leak syndrome. Hematological complications. A severe coagulopathy resembling disseminated intravascular coagulation, or DIC, is common. Hemorrhagic manifestations are particularly pronounced in patients infected with the Andes virus genotype. Advanced medical management. Due to massive systemic fluid shifts and widespread organ dysfunction, aggressive supportive interventions are standard. Patients frequently require mechanical ventilation to manage respiratory failure, alongside continuous renal replacement therapy, or CRRT, or hemodialysis to manage volume status and metabolic derangements. If severe myocardial depression occurs, indicated by a cardiac index falling below 2.5 liters per minute per meter squared, the rapid initiation of extracorporeal pulmonary oxygenation, or ECMO, serves as a vital rescue therapy. To catch this early, the boards love to test a classic presumptive triad and lab checklist. You should strongly suspect Hfrs if a patient has a recent febrile illness combined with a relevant rodent or geographic exposure within the last 1 to 7 weeks. The earliest and most specific laboratory abnormality is a rapidly declining platelet count. If platelets drop below 40,000 per microliter, it strongly predicts severe disease and high mortality. On your exams, a presumptive clinical diagnosis of Hfrs can be reliably established if a patient meets at least 4 out of these 5 specific laboratory criteria: thrombocytopenia, platelets less than 150,000 per microliter, a significant left shift of the myelocyte lineage, seeing premature white blood cells like metamyelocytes, promyelocytes, and band neutrophils on the smear, a distinct lack of toxic granulation in those granulocytes, immunoblasts making up more than 10% of the total lymphoid series, and hemoconcentration due to plasma leaking out of the vessels, hematocrit greater than 50% in men or 48% in women. To definitively confirm the infection, you must send out serological tests for anti-hantavirus IgM and IgG. Keep in mind, IgM tests have a high false positive rate, so a positive IgM alone isn't enough. You need a positive IgM and IgG, or a 4-fold rise in IgG titers over 2 to 4 weeks. Alternatively, an RT-PCR can detect viral RNA up to 2 weeks before symptoms start, offering an excellent tool for early diagnosis. Finally, let's revisit that critical management trap from the intro. When a hantavirus patient develops severe hypotension, the early use of vasopressors and inotropes must be prioritized over aggressive intravenous fluid resuscitation. This directly contrasts with the standard fluid-heavy resuscitation protocols used for septic shock. Because their capillaries are completely open and leaking, pouring IV fluids into these patients will instantly flood their lungs and worsen cardiogenic shock. Let's summarize. Hantavirus is an enveloped RNA Bunyaviridae driving functional capillary leaks. Watch for the Andes virus if person-to-person transmission or a cruise ship is mentioned. Spot the early thrombocytopenia, hemoconcentration, and left shift. Support their lungs, avoid fluid overload, and start pressors early. If this breakdown helped you master hantavirus pathogenesis and prepares you for your next exam, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts on the 2026 outbreak in the comments below. See you in the next diary entry.